feel special, but it only served to rub it in my brothers' faces the fact that my father loved me more than my brothers. My brothers hated me for that robe and never spoke kindly of me, which only hurt my feelings and kind of soured my attitude toward them. One night I had a dream. My sheaf rose up above the other 11 sheaves representing my brothers, and they all encircled me, and they bowed down to my sheaf, not exercising good judgment. I went and told my brothers that dream, which made them resent me even more. Then I had another dream. In this dream, the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars, representing my father, mother, and 11 brothers, all bowed down to me. You would have thought that I would have learned the first time, but I went and told my brothers again, which only made their hatred grow. I even went and told my father, and even he jumped on me for it. Looking back, I can see that I shared those dreams to gloat. I mean, think about it. I was 17 years old. And what 17-year-old has not thought that they knew it all? Not only that, I was the favored child who had a couple of special dreams about me being exalted and my family bowing down to me. I couldn't see it at the time, but my father's favoritism and the dreams I had went to my head. That's the way pride is. It's difficult to see in ourselves. I would compare it to having a plank in your own eye that obstructs your vision while you still look down on others for the specks in their eyes. You get so blind to it because it's always there that you no longer notice it even more, and just how much it skews how you view everyone and everything else. And that brings us to an outline I wanted to give you today. When you're in the fire, always remember that God does care, C-A-R-E. He does care, even when it's hard to see and understand what's going on. And the first thing is, in the fire, God develops character. Character. When God gave me those dreams that I would be lifted up high, I had no idea at that time that I would have to be brought so low first. When pride enters your heart, God can and will humble you. The question is whether or not you will let him develop the character in you to match the things and plans he has in store for you. One day, my father sent me out to go check on my brothers who were out watching the flocks. And when I eventually caught up to them, I will never forget what happened next. As soon as I got to them, they grabbed me, ripped the robe from me, and they threw me in a cistern. And I got scared because I overheard them talking about killing me. But then the next thing that I knew is they were pulling me out of that cistern. And they took me, their own brother, and they sold me as a slave to a group of Midianites, a bunch of foreigners. And the Midianites then took me to a foreign land where they sold me to an Egyptian named Potiphar. Potiphar was one of Pharaoh's officials and the captain of the guard. A detail at the time that I did not know would prove so significant for my life. But think about where I was. I had gone from being the favored, spoiled, center of my father's attention son to being a slave in a foreign land under a foreigner. Talk about culture shock. After a while, I learned their customs. I was faithful and diligent about my responsibilities as a servant, and I did the best I could. I can look back and see how the Lord was with me during that process. Eventually, I was so faithful and so good, and the Lord blessed me that Potiphar promoted me to where he put me in charge of his entire household and everything he had. I had worked my way up and made the best of my circumstances. You see, becoming a slave in a foreign land was not what I had envisioned when I had those dreams, but it was where God had planted me for that season. Perhaps you might find yourself in a hard place right now, or a season in your life that's super, super difficult. Remember, for this season, for right here, right now, God has you planted here. And as the saying goes, seek to bloom where you are planted. Not always look at the grass that always seems to be greener on the other side of the fence. Well, I had worked my way up to being Potiphar's right-hand man. Things were going very well until the day I remember Potiphar's wife pulling me aside and whispering in my ear, "Hello, big boy. Come up and see me sometime." That woman put moves on me time after time after time. But I was faithful to God and my master. I resisted. But then there came a time where she was in the house alone and I had gone in to do something, and she grabbed me and tried to put the moves on me again. And I resisted like I was supposed to. I took off running. The problem was my cloak didn't go with me. And so there she stood, and frustrated with me, she screamed out, and her servants came running, and she said that I had tried to take advantage of her, even though it was her who had been in the wrong all along. At that point, when my master came home, he threw me in the Pharaoh's prison where the Pharaoh kept his prisoners. He was so angry. I want to ask you, have you ever suffered injustice after injustice at the hands of others? Perhaps you were betrayed and railroaded out like my brothers did to me. Perhaps you were slandered and your reputation tarnished for something that you did not do, like Potiphar's wife did to me. It's really hard when someone does you wrong and you're the one that has to wind up paying for it. It's easy to become angry because you should. But it's so easy for that anger to transition into bitterness. And I want to encourage you, don't let that happen. Resist that temptation. Because just because someone has wronged you doesn't necessarily mean that they're getting away with it. nor does it mean that God has abandoned you. You see, the Lord was with me even in that prison. Even though I struggled to understand why I was there. You see, in my estimation, I seemed to be going in the wrong direction. My dreams had told me I would be promoted to the top, but it seemed at this point I had been demoted down to rock bottom. Nevertheless, God was at work. I sought to bloom where I was planted and proved to be a good prisoner to the point that the warden eventually put me in charge of all the prisoners and the prison itself. And this leads to the second point this morning. In the fire, God develops abilities. Abilities. I didn't know it at the time, but all those 13 years as a slave and as a prisoner taught me valuable skills that I would need later on. I learned how to run a household and then a prison so that one day I could help run a country through a crisis. I learned a lot of organizational skills. I learned a lot about people skills. I learned a lot about how to plan effectively and manage resources efficiently. I learned a lot about conflict resolution and problem solving during that time. I learned how to work under a supervisor while supervising and working with others. All these abilities and skills would prove invaluable to God's future plans for me, though I didn't see it at the time. Even in the fire, God can equip you for assignments and things He has in store for you, even if it means in glory. One day when I was in prison, I remember helping the warden process a couple of prisoners who were a little bit unique. It was the cupbearer and the chief baker to the Pharaoh himself. After they had been there for some time, they had a couple of dreams themselves. And because God had blessed me, they came and asked me to interpret for them. I had bad news for the baker. I hated to tell him. I had to tell him, look, in a few days, the Pharaoh is going to kill you. But the cupbearer had a much more encouraging dream. I got to tell the cupbearer, you will be restored to your position by the Pharaoh. And I thought, since I had delivered him such good news, I had done him a favor by interpreting his dream. I thought he could do me a favor. I said, look, I'm in prison unjustly. I shouldn't be here. I'm innocent. Would you please, when you get back before Pharaoh, would you plead my case to him so that I could hopefully be free? Well, the cupbearer left. I waited for days, then weeks, then months, then a year passed, and I gave up, realizing that he had forgotten all about me, much like we probably feel sometimes when people use you and just drop you. And I remember in that prison cell wrestling with thoughts that God may have given up or forgotten me as well. I held on to what you might call faith the size of a mustard seed, even though nothing around me seemed to make any sense. This brings to the third point this morning. In the fire, God develops relationship with Him. When our faith is challenged in the fire, we are driven closer and closer to God. When I was in that prison for that next couple of years after the cupbearer was gone, having been forgotten, I poured out my heart to God in prayer. At times my heart was broken, and at times my only offerings were my tears. I hungered for his presence when I felt forsaken. And I thirst for his power when my strength was all gone. God had humbled me and knocked all that pride right out of me. I remember when I was in prayer one night, I just called out to God. I said, God, if you keep removing pride from me, there's going to be nothing left. And I will never forget his soft, still voice in that moment saying, now you're getting it. Now you're getting it. You see, when there is less of me, there is room for more of him. Pride tells us that it's all about us. Humility challenges us that it's all about him. When I reached the point and surrendered to him, that's when I discovered a divine peace that surpasses all understanding in my surroundings. Then sometime later, I got up, seemed like a normal day. Suddenly the warden came and got me. He said, look, the Pharaoh wants to see you. You need to get cleaned up. So I shaved and put on some respectable clothes. They rushed me before the Pharaoh. And once I got there, I found out what all this ruckus was all about. You see, the Pharaoh had had some dreams, and it was that point the cupbearer finally remembered me. No one could interpret them. So I was brought in to interpret two different dreams. And I told the Pharaoh, the two dreams are God revealing to you the same thing. You are going to experience 7 years of plenty in your harvest, followed by 7 years of famine. Then, using the administrative abilities and wisdom that God had given me and that I had learned during those 13 years, I put together a quick improv plan. I proposed that you save, Pharaoh, 1/5 of each harvest each year and put it in reserve so that you can have food for the 7 years of famine. And before I knew it, the Pharaoh put his signet ring on my hand. And he promoted me to second in command of all Egypt just under him. And put me over the whole project. Can you imagine? When I eventually had time for my head to stop spinning and to process what had just happened, I realized God had been preparing me for this moment all along. Years later, my family did come and bow down to me during the famine, and God used me in my position to help save them from starvation. And this brings to the fourth and final point. In the fire, God develops experience. Experience. With experience comes wisdom, if you allow God to instill you with humility as He purifies your heart and your character. And with wisdom comes a greater, more godly perspective of everyone and everything else. That's how I was able to forgive my brothers. They had a hard time believing it. I could see that God used their injustice toward me to jumpstart my spiritual and physical journey to bring me to a point where I needed to be